Thank you very much for having me. Don't thank me yet.
You have the right to remain.
Is it finished?
Yeah, I just saw your tag expired.
Because it's in a TV. Do you have a single fact to back that up?
You know, this is the one where you think you're funny.
You understand me?
I think you need to go get a dictionary.
Oh, wait. I didn't turn the mics up. Now we're live.
Yes, we are live now, and we just watched Hereditary
We did.
right as the sun went down, as it does in December at 5 o'clock
5
in the
o'clock, yeah.
afternoon. So we were able to get this podcast in while I'm still awake. Double fisting coffees on both sides.
And I've got my tea.
Yes, and your concoction that you made in your
It's
kitchen.
bread with butter and jelly.
Ooh, but it's not as warm as you'd like it to be.
No, it's peach jam as well.
Yeah.
From one of the weddings we did.
Ooh.
So yeah, let's get into this, I guess. Do you want to go ahead and start? Tell me what are your initial thoughts?
Well, I kind of feel like I've had surgery done on my brain without an actual incision made. This is like, I got a lot of imagery floating around in my head right now, and there's like a lot to process and dissect out of all of that. But yeah, this definitely isn't the kind of thing you sit down with little Johnny to watch. That's for sure.
Little Johnny. Little Billy.
Yeah. It's really hard to come up with like a summary right away, which
Well, what are your like
overall-
just basic thoughts on the movie?
Well, I really liked it, and I was into it the whole time it was happening. And from the beginning, it kind of made me think several times like, oh, I think I'm smart enough to catch on to what they're doing here. Huh. But I guess I really never quite got it figured out all the way through the way I expected. And I'm still figuring
Same.
it out. My head is still a swirling stew
Right.
over this whole thing. I'm just seeing like a couple of, like I said, staple images in my mind. Most notably the part at the end where, and this is, as we always say, spoilers.
We're getting close to legitimacy on that because
Yeah,
now we're only
so-
2 years back.
Right. So yeah, this was a movie that I had found in a Walmart bin for $5, and we had talked about wanting to see it because it had been recommended
Right.
a bunch of times to me. And so finally got around to it. And so we're like jumping into this podcast right after seeing it.
Literally within like 15 minutes.
You went up and heated up some wedding food. I had a cigarette, and that's about all the time that's
That
passed.
was that.
Yeah.
Um
What's your initial takeaway?
well, my initial just general, I guess, takeaway is the movie had a way of really, really taking you for a ride. And it wasn't just like, I don't know, a lot of movies can take you for rides, but this one did it in a very subtle and I think it was like genius way because it was everything from noise to shot framing, which I mean other movies do this, but it was just like everything like was pulling you along. So much so it's just like the little noise. Like they like solidify that into your brain at the beginning as something you don't really need to worry about. It's just like a tick. And then all of a sudden it becomes a thing.
Right.
Like, oh, after she's dead, all of a sudden this noise, like one of the first times it happened, it scared the shit out of me. And I literally got goosebumps and was like, oh, God, like this is it.
You don't really think anything of it at
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
But then you realize like, okay, there's a
Like, it
reason
was
that,
just-
that tick was in there.
Yeah. So in that sense, I think it was pretty awesome. I mean, the movie overall was awesome. It wasn't
Yeah.
like that's the only reason, but it was just
I appreciated very much how unnerving this movie was.
yeah,
I would
100%.
definitely call this a scary movie.
Yeah,
But it wasn't scary in that cheap sort of way. Like a lot of these haunted
no,
house the
haunted house.
haunted house movies like are pretty creepy about
Yeah.
2/3 of the way through. But then the final act, the ghost is pretty much all right up in the camera going booga 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 at
Right.
people.
And it's just kind of like, well, there goes all that.
It's like, yeah, I'm no longer kind of like
Yeah.
cringing up in my seat at that point. I'm just able to relax at that point and just be like, okay,
Right.
you know, now they're just running all over the place.
Yeah.
And you can see what's going on. But this was just, it was just always fucking with my head.
Right.
Like, not only with its imagery, but like you were saying with the sound design and these undertones.
Yep.
And these very creative cuts that were made.
Yep.
And
yeah, it was just 100%.
The whole fucking like dollhouse world.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah, 100%.
everything just had this real sinister vibe. And like I mentioned while we were watching it out loud, there isn't like that funny guy in this movie, that comic relief character. It's all just
it's all or nothing.
You're in for a trip to grim shit town,
right?
With this,
right?
So yeah, not for casual viewing for sure.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can jump on my list and
yeah, the note-taking list.
Yeah. So, one of the, and this was at the very beginning. I mean, they did a good job throughout the entire movie, but it was just like really pushed home, I think, correctly at the beginning. I just wrote down sounds, noises, music, sound design in general. Like perfect. Because everything they did like basically pushed your feelings one way. So it wasn't like you know, like a Foley artist back there, like that was basically like competing with the music. It was just like the music, sound design, just in general, whether it be, you know, on like on set sounds possibly, or Foley, or just sound effects they threw in everywhere. And then music in general, it was just all like, if they wanted you to feel nervous, everything was going to make you feel nervous.
Yeah.
If they wanted anxiety, everything was going to push it. It wasn't like some movies, I like Birdman did this a little bit, where it was just like there was definitely like it was being pushed like an anxiousness about the scene, but it like the entire scene wasn't like pushing you there. It was more of like a I don't know, like a fun anxious, if that makes any type of sense. But
well, we were both pretty on edge there.
Yeah.
With a lot of that.
But this movie, I don't know, it was surprising to me how well that was done.
Yeah, like everything was really meticulous.
Yeah.
About every aspect of it. It's like they consulted a whole group of experts on like anxiety and psychology and
like what's gonna work.
And there's just like, hey, how do we push all of that to the maximum? Like, give me the perfect brew.
Right.
And then they all sat down with like the sound guys, the cinematographer, and lighting and everything, just to set the mood just right in every case. And these scenes, they would just unravel so painfully slowly.
Oh yeah.
But like you're intrigued the whole time. It's not like you're looking at your watch.
It reminded me of Tarantino when he just like sits on something and it's like, wow, this whole thing should have cut like way before now, but it didn't. And you just accept that that's the style of movie that he does. And this did it. I don't think I could say it was like his style of doing it, but it did it in a different way that made, like, once again, everything feel more anxious. It was just like awkward.
Yeah.
You know, in like when Tarantino's awkwardness usually is like the best way possible, or almost like a comic relief at that point. Like this was just like pile on the nonsense feeling of anxiety and fear and, you know, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. And after they put you through all this unnerving, then you'll get a shot of, you know, the little girl's head laying in the road
Right.
after she got it bonked off by the telephone pole.
Yeah.
Very unexpectedly, just like.
But yeah, which is like, okay.
Yeah. So on the cover of this movie is the mom and the daughter, and I remember seeing in the trailers, which from what I remember, I don't remember seeing any trailers that like gave too much away or anything.
No, if
thankfully,
you honestly have no idea what this is about if you just go off of a trailer,
yeah. So
which is
it was
amazing.
very ambiguous right out of the gate, which you can't like describe this to somebody before they watch it. You just have to be like, hey, you want to see some fucked up shit? Yeah, I do. Okay, Hereditary for you.
Yeah.
And you'll get it. But yeah, like it was kind of like a home run slam in our faces. No pun intended, but when they drove past the telephone pole and the little girl got her head knocked off, just boom.
Right.
And it just lingers on that guy's silence, like, because it gives us the audience time to sit there and process that too.
Yeah,
because we need that. We just saw a girl get her,
and it's somehow
13-year-old. Is it 12, 13?
Yeah, she's like 13 in the movie or whatever.
Yeah, you see that, and it's so visceral and so holy shit! Wow, out of nowhere, you need a minute or two to come down from that because it's so damn like, You've seen kids die
literally in
before.
Your face. I mean,
but the way this was done,
well, and not to give
like
too much away, but it was like, you know, for those who haven't seen it, I'll be as vague as possible. No, just picking. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
So like, it's already a tense situation because, you know, the son at that point has had his mom just constantly yelling at him, you know, you're taking your sister to this party. He reluctant, you know, he doesn't want to take her, but he knows his mom won't question anything if she goes with him type of a thing. So it's like that typical, you know, mom and son teenager going to a party thing. And so while she's at the party, she eats chocolate cake that he tells her to eat, and it has peanuts in it for some.
Just so he can go smoke weed and get rid of her.
That's like one of the only like hyper convenience moments in the movie. How many people do you know? How many people do you know put peanuts inside of a chocolate cake?
Not too often.
I mean, unless it's peanut butter. If it's a peanut butter, okay, I buy that. No big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been to any parties recently where that was on the menu. But
do you remember how many high school year parties you went to where they were serving chocolate cake? That's the only convenience in that whole movie that stood out as was like, oh God.
Well, I went to a Halloween party I was at recently. They had chocolate cake.
No, in high school.
Oh, high school.
Nobody's making chocolate cake.
Oh, well, I don't think it's that much of a stretch to suggest that somebody might have a chocolate cake at a house party.
Okay. Yeah.
What was the part convenient about there being chocolate cake with peanuts in it, or the fact that the brother said, hey, you should go eat some cake while I smoke weed?
The convenience was that cake had peanuts in it, because that's like a storyline setup so you can drive the story farther.
Well, yeah, but I don't see that as any. I didn't get hung up on that. You got hung up on that a little bit? There
no.
being peanuts in the cake?
No. I just said that's the one thing that is like a convenience in that entire movie. Like that was written in for...
But not in a way that bugs you in any way.
Nah, not really. It's just one of the only like notable things that I could say is like, yeah, of course. Well, when you're writing when you're writing a story and you're like, how do I kill this character? Oh yeah, the party has chocolate cake with peanuts in it. Like that, you know what I mean.
Yeah, there's plenty of...
I'm not like picking on it like
the whole situation. There's been crazy strings of events that have happened to people. People got all kinds of crazy stories. And if someone told me like one time, oh, I knew someone that was allergic to peanuts and they had a peanut butter cake. Oh my God. And I had to drive to the hospital.
Right.
Like I thought that was going to be like the problem. Like this problem from going to this party, mom's like, hey, you're not going to be drinking. No, mom, I'm not going to be drinking. Not. Okay, well then you can take your sister with you. Okay, mom, that's no problem. Brings her to the party. and already your mind starts thinking, what's gonna go wrong here? Like,
Well,
he's
yeah.
he's gonna screw this up somehow, and mom's
Yeah.
gonna find out that he was actually drinking at the
Yeah.
party. But it's a lot worse than mom finding out he was drinking. It
Ugh.
actually escalates to mom finding her daughter's severed head in the back seat of the
No,
car.
she doesn't see that. She sees the body.
That-
The head was on the side
or
of the road.
yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Severed body.
Yeah,
Severed,
because she even makes the statement at some point.
Severed
She's
head
like,
body.
I just want to see her face. Like,
yeah, we saw her face. Cut to a nice shot of
Yeah.
her face.
no,
on
the
tarmac.
whole cake thing, that's just kind of like a picking thing. I'm not like it's like, oh man, that's a setback for me. But this is what this movie did really well. Those moments where you could kind of pick out as something that probably could be a toss-up moment, then lead to something you actually never saw coming, never expected. So it makes up for itself in that, like, I'm gonna write myself in a favor to get out of this thing,
Yeah.
type of a deal.
Because the mom was sitting, she was at that meeting where the lost a loved one meeting, and she sat there for like 3 minutes or maybe longer, expressing all of her grief,
Right.
all her loss over her life. And I was like, okay, this movie's already got enough loss packed in it to conjure up some ghosts out of that shit,
Right.
or whatever hauntings. Like, we got what we need right
Right.
there. And then she gets this shit dumped on her.
Oh yeah.
Coming outside and finding that, ugh.
Well, and the thing that's like
Ugh.
so upsetting about it is that he is in such shock, and I don't even know if he ever turns around.
The brother.
Yeah, the brother. I don't think he ever
Yeah.
turned around in the car after it happened. He just knew. He was like, you
Yeah.
know, I'm not looking back there. And so he was in such shock that he just goes from basically the scene of the accident to home to his bed and just goes to sleep.
With his
And-
eyes open.
Yeah, I guess. Or it gets in bed rather. And then the next morning he's there, and then you just hear like the mom just screaming,
Yeah.
obviously. And
Very
it's just
well,
like,
I might add.
wow.
Yeah.
Very
That-
well.
Yeah. Oscar worthy winning grief scream on that one.
Right.
That was just like very believable.
Yeah.
Like, if you actually heard someone that screamed in grief, I was like, okay, that sounds.
Yeah,
like
it
how
was pretty
people
legit.
scream.
Yeah, so like for me, there isn't like a whole lot to pick apart of this movie. I know like the last two movies I picked them apart a little bit, but to me the only like real
The best you could do is the cake.
well, that's the biggest. Well, yeah, that's like a low hanging fruit. Yeah, but the only other thing that I will say about it is, with how confusing it is, and just like how the movie sets itself up to be, and then where it leads to by the end, it feels like when I was attempting to explain to you about like that idea that I had when it was like, oh yeah, you wake up beside yourself, and then you remember, when I was trying to shoot that, like
Yeah.
it felt like the story just lost its way into like just kind of whatever it comes up with kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So it's like by the end of the movie, there's just these people that are now worshiping the brother after all of his family dies, because I'm assuming this demon king guy possessed his mom. That's what my actual guess is, because the demon guy possessed his maybe grandmother, then his mom.
Well,
Right.
This was after she made the sacrifice of her husband, right? Didn't she like let this demon into the world by? Because
Well-
I'm still trying to piece it together.
So like the grandmother was upstairs, right?
The
In
body.
like the attic, right?
Yeah.
So it had those symbols on it. So that has to lead to something that was happening in the house, which I'm assuming is like the little girl stuff. So like that's why all that was happening, and it was real creepy and stuff. But then like the little girl dies, and then the mom when she then does that little seance thing, then it's like 100% evident that she was possessed, at least in that moment, by the little girl, but possibly something else. And then they explain that this demon king is looking for a male host. And then at the very, very end, when that woman, which is Julie or something,
The woman that was always wearing red.
yeah, whatever, Joanna, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Either way, I'm almost sure it's her voice then talking to the son and saying like, we got rid of those female bodies, now you have like a young male body to host or something like that. And I'm assuming she's talking about either the grandmother and the mom or both of them. I don't know. I'm very confused because then there was like talks at the very beginning about how the grandmother didn't want her to mother the son or something along those lines. And then she's like, she convinced me to do it, or I don't remember, but I think that was all like a setup for then the grandmother at some point to offer the son as a host to Demon Boy King, one of the 8 kings of the hell or whatever she said.
Yeah.
So my point to that is, towards the ending, wherever, like, obviously we're in the climax and it's just there's no stopping. It's just full throttle basically the whole way to the end. I mean, you kind of get let go after he jumps out the window just because everything's not as abrasive at that point, other than seeing his like mother's floating headless body up into the thing.
That
like when like shortly before she kind of figures it out and wants to burn the book type of thing, that's when the movie, it was like that moment that you see the ghost or like what it really is. It's just not that impressive. It was just like, those were the moments leading up to the kind of like, moment for me, where it was like, it didn't hold together as much as I thought it was going to after experiencing like the first half of the movie.
You mean
if
like
that makes any sense.
By the very end?
Yeah.
When he ended
It
up
was
in
just
the...
kind of like, I get the story kind of, but it felt like it was just kind of like I don't know the best way to explain it. It's almost just like you have a story here, and then towards the end, it just kind of starts to fall through your fingers a little bit, because it's just like it makes sense in one way, but it feels really messy in another.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because then by the end, it's just like, this is what grandma was doing. Then the Joanna person was always around, and Demon King, 8th King of the Hell, is coming back. And it's like, what? Like, so that was just like, and maybe they want to sum it up to like, well, that's why everything was happening, of course. But that's where it's just like, I don't, I like that entire movie. I would have been probably more settled in the fact that just like maybe the mom was like at the end of the movie, if it would have been like an M. Night movie at the end where it's just like, finally the dad gets his stuff together and puts her in a mental hospital, and like everything stops and it was just her like sleepwalking. I kind of would have accepted that, because it's just it's makes a little bit more sense. But then, you know what I mean? By the end of the movie, the mom was literally on the ceiling crawling around because she was possessed. And the only other time we saw her possessed was by like the daughter, I think.
Yeah.
So that's where it just kind of like, I can't hold it very long. It's a little too.
I feel like we kind of need to do like a timeline of course of events of this movie,
Of the movie.
starting with the grandmother.
Yeah.
So grandma dies, and we're introduced to this family of the grandmother's, the grandmother's
Right.
family,
Right, which is just like
who she
daughter,
she survived by.
right? Yeah.
And we're introduced to them like by the camera going into a dollhouse,
Mm-hmm.
and then revealing the family, and then throughout the whole movie portraying them as if you're looking at them as if they're these figures in a dollhouse,
Right.
being manipulated somehow.
It's like a puppet imagery. It's like they're in a dollhouse and I'm playing with them type of a thing.
So So yeah, help me piece this together. Whose fucking dollhouse is this, and who's playing with it, and
So
like what's going on
the
here?
imagery here for me is there's obviously a puppet master or like a child playing with toys set like idea going on here. So it's kind of like, to me, it see, this is where it kind of falls apart to me, because the characters that were introduced and kind of held on to throughout the entire movie end up and don't be the most important characters in the end. So like you have this family, and then it turns out like, 3 out of 4 of them are going to die. The son is the most valuable to this cult, but you don't know anything about the cult.
They just have some kind of like voodoo doll possession
Right.
of this family somehow.
Yeah, and that started with the grandmother somehow. So that's where it just is kind of like,
and then the family themselves builds these models, like
well, the daughter
or
does.
yeah. I keep wanting to call her the mom. There's like
Well, it's
grandmother,
yeah,
mom, and daughter.
yeah.
All
Sorry,
three of which
yeah,
are
mom,
dead by
right.
the end of this thing.
Yeah.
Including dad too. So just the brother
Right.
makes it through to the very end. He crawls up into this loft thing where he just saw a moment ago his mom's
Oh yeah,
headless
like the treehouse thingy.
yeah, the treehouse thingy. He saw his mom's headless body float up there, which is just like just gives me the fucking.
It was
willies.
it was a very eerie, because he literally
it's so silent.
if
it's
you
just like
well,
hovering
here's
up.
thing. If you back up literally less than a minute, he's in an attic watching his mom literally levitate right off the ceiling, stabbing herself in the neck,
sawing her head off with like a piano wire.
I thought it was like 2 knives. Either
I
way,
don't know. It was like,
she's literally cutting her own head off and like looks at him, and then he like looks over, and there's just 3 naked people in the attic.
Yeah, what? So that
with like
with the naked
pale
people.
white skin.
What's these naked people doing there?
I have no idea. My only guess, my only like kind of like, okay, maybe it's a thing, is like, so
Are these just extra leftover dolls
no, so
that he's just putting in the house?
do you remember at the very beginning, the daughter was at the casket looking at her grandmother, and she turns around and sees the creepy guy standing there, and he's just like,
yeah,
like that?
Yeah.
I'm almost positive he was the guy who was then standing naked after the son saw his dad like charred for the first time. He hears a noise, turns around, and there's a guy like in that doorway, and he's like, and then his mom's up on the ceiling behind him, just waiting to
pounce on
yeah.
him.
So there's connections somehow there with things and people. I'm not 100%.
Well,
At one point, my mind went to, oh, these are like maybe dead bodies that like grandma butchered, but that doesn't make any sense. So the only thing I can think of is just they're part of this cult thing and have been doing things around the house without anybody really knowing. Because at the very end, the grandmother, there was that picture of the grandmother in that like treehouse thing when they were all bowing down. And I'm almost positive it said Queen something. And so if his grandmother was like the queen of this cult, and then the demon king was supposed to be obviously the king, then I guess the family's like royalty, but
so the grandmother,
the cult has to take care of business.
The grandmother seems to be pulling the strings
in death,
and she doesn't seem to give a shit about her daughter or her granddaughter because they can't pass on the lineage.
Yeah, right.
Like, I mean, and it's called Hereditary, so it would make sense. Like the grandmother, if she is pulling the strings, she'd have the son be the one that lives through it at the end, so he can pass on the lineage and continue this cursed voodoo haunted house, dollhouse shit that's going on. However, all that ties together. There's probably plenty of like YouTube explains Hereditary videos out there, but we're just trying to like figure this out all on ourselves.
Right.
Like 5 minutes after seeing it on like,
which is tough.
Yeah, with all these coffees and half sleeping.
Yeah. So that's the only like, don't get me wrong, I really liked this movie. Like,
It was
this was
intriguing as hell.
really, really good.
It's a thinker.
There was
also.
just, there's always like a moment in every movie where it's just like, ah, like, and for me, there wasn't like a specific moment like that. It was just kind of like that last, like, eighth of the movie where it was just like, it's just like way too far out in left field now for me to connect dots without knowing what the writers and director had in mind. And so that's the only time I would say it falls short, but it wouldn't be like a fall short.
Yeah, well, the moment I got like slightly twitchy was, or where I was like, I don't know if this is going to go in a direction to Stupid Town
Right.
or the same thing we've seen 1,100 times before. When the mom was in there with the lady that could call the spirit or whatever,
Yeah, that was the Joanna or whatever.
the Joanna, and then there was the little chalkboard and the writing started.
Yeah.
At that point, I was just like, okay, is this just going to kind of be our segue into the spirit world where ghosts and monsters go habooga booga into the camera
Right.
now? And it didn't end up being that. In the time, usually these kinds of haunted house movies, like I was saying, in that final act of the movie, you have the ghosts and monsters all up in your face.
Right.
But in this one's last act of the movie, you got the treatment of the shot that had both of us just like freaking the fuck out, where you see what you finally get, like this, the reveal you've been waiting for,
Right.
in a sense, but it's done perfectly.
Well, it
with those,
goes
like,
it goes back to the dollhouse
yeah,
and the weird. So
those shots.
I think what's so like gut wrenching
So
about those
creepy.
specific shots to me is the view that you are looking at is impossible.
Yeah,
So
it's as if
your
it is a dollhouse
right.
cutout.
So your mind is just like, okay, so you're linking like the dollhouse thing at the beginning and her always kind of making models of things and dollhousey stuff. So you're linking those two together and you're just like, man, this is such a weird. So it makes you kind of uncomfortable just to begin with. Second of all, the shots hyper dark, but only in very select areas.
Yeah,
And the lighting was done so well. And then you saw it first. And you were just like, oh,
Yeah.
look at the corner.
Yeah, you
and
were
I
on
was
the
like,
other there.
"Ah."
I think you were looking in the other corner.
I was, because another thing, which goes back to framing, another thing this movie did really, really well is kind of like the third rule. So like a lot of reveals in like scary movies are in that unused third.
Yeah,
To leave room for something. So what they did a lot of is they set those shots up and then played in the space you weren't expecting it to be, and it was just like, that's very clever.
Yeah,
Like, it's very well done.
and I would much because it held on that goddamn shot. It felt like an eternity,
So
and every second of it was terrifyingly scary. And that is
we didn't have to
so,
see anything to be terrified.
That is so much more potent than
yeah.
an insta jump scare. Boom,
Right.
it happens, and you was like, that was annoying.
Right.
But this was just like, it was just like constant delivery of fear just being pumped into you for
Right.
that full minute of just uncomfortable, because that thing's just up there. This clueless fuck is just down there on the bed, just sitting up in bed, not knowing that thing is right up behind his head,
and it was his
on him at any
mom.
second. I didn't know if it was his mom or his.
What did you say? It was
sister.
a baseball player or something? I can't, like, when it then cut.
Baseball.
Well, it was like that shot. Then it cut to an angle of him like looking across his face, and you can see the room in the background. And then it just kind of goes like through the air, kind of like walk, running, swimming thing.
I was like, it's Spider-Man doing the Spider-Man walk.
What did I say? Baseball player.
Yeah, that's how the baseball players do it. If only they ran.
Yeah,
no
you were
runs
like
that,
Spider-Man
crawling along the wall.
Yeah, so it was just so I don't know. There were some things about this movie that were just like flabbergastingly good. Like, it was just whoever like set this up knew exactly what they needed to do to get the feeling out of it. And it was well done.
Yeah, it took its time where it needed to, and it always paid off.
Yeah.
it was always unnerving. Like the scene would just open and you'd be in a bedroom and you'd just be like, oh Jesus Christ.
Right.
Like every corner of that room, the way every shot is framed up, there could be something
Yeah,
happening
I mean,
somewhere.
it's just like and this is what's weird to me about like characters, because this movie did a really good job at making you think that like a certain character, a certain thing was the issue. So like the entire movie, fucking grandma, grandma. She scares the shit out of you one good time when her daughter is walking out of the room and she just looks over and it's just, there's grandma,
dude,
doesn't move, and then she turns the light off, shot doesn't cut, turns the light on, it complete like disappears in the light, and that's the only time.
That's all
the only other time you see grandma is when she's up in the attic with her head chopped off and has been rotting for weeks on end.
Yeah. It's so amazing how, like you just said, that's the only time you see Ghost Grandma. Ghost Grandma doesn't appear all throughout the movie. They string you along
almost the entire movie thinking that she's coming out at some point.
That they're gonna cash in on the jump scare with her, with the demon makeup and the yellow eyes, and someone's gonna be in bed. They're gonna roll over, and Grandma's gonna be laying right next to him and go right in her face.
And it never happened.
Shit never happened.
Never happened.
Yeah, it just always found a way. It managed to find a way to.
Well, it was even like the daughter waking up in the son's room, and then her head like rolls off, and it's just like a ball.
Yeah. And then you heard like that growling noise that ended up just being their little pupper in the hallway. But I was like, when that growling came in, I was just like, this is it. I was like, I was like holding one of my eardrums because I was expecting these goddamn jump scares, but they never happened.
You're like, if it only goes in one ear, it's fine.
Yeah, we've been conditioned to expect these jump scares, so I was always expecting them, but I don't think there really ever was one. Not even one.
No, there really wasn't.
But still, I was just like, ugh.
Oh, the only jump scare,
was her head hitting the telephone pole.
Well, it was that bird slamming against the window at the school.
I almost called it out. I actually didn't even jump on that happened.
Me neither, but that was like the closest thing to a jump scare.
Yeah, normally that would make me jump out of my skin, but that I didn't for some reason. I think I like saw it coming right before it happened, so I was like,
well, yeah, you kind of see the bird, and then it's just like,
yeah, and then she saws its head off.
Yeah, the whole thing is just, there's so much like weird imagery there that connects other things. So like the bird's head gets cut off, her head gets cut off, grandma's head's cut off. There was even like that statue of the Demon King that was in that treehouse thing.
Yeah,
had like what appeared to be a severed head on top of the head.
Her red hereditary.
You know what I mean, though.
Yeah,
it's like there's stuff. I think there's probably brilliance in some of that stuff. It's like, if this is the movie line, it's just like out in abstract land where it's like definitely up for interpretation.
Yeah, you totally gotta you can't just finish this one up and have it all figured out. Like, I feel like everything connects in a way because like, as we've both experienced, this was like a really meticulously well thought out movie.
Right.
So I'm sure all the dots connect in some way or another. And that makes it all the more rewarding if you can figure shit out on your own.
Right. Which is going to be hard in general.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of different things. It's just like a lot of stuff that's surrounding kind of the same general thing. So I had shock factor was like 200% out of 100, just because, I mean, it's like we've been talking, the ability to be like leading you down a road and you're just kind of like, yep, I'm eating this trail of, nuts that he left on the ground for me. And then it's like, you finally get to a point where it's like, there's the action or the scare, and it's like completely out of left field.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense with what you were being led on. Yeah. So in that, it was like, I think that was brilliant to me.
It gets you in ways you haven't been got before.
Yeah, and it was very good and clever at that.
I appreciated that very much.
Another thing I wrote down was taking you like right to the edge and then backing off completely. There was a couple times, and it was my best understanding of something like that is to build anxiety over time so it kind of holds and builds up. So there was a bunch of stuff where um like something would be real tense, the music starts to swell, and then there's that weird like hold there, like it may be even holding the last note of that like little song, and it just holds you there and you're like, okay, here it comes, and then it's just like cuts.
All the sound drops out.
It cuts to like next day, son's in school, just chilling, smoking a bowl under the, it's just like, what? But like that sits like in you, and then it happens again and again and again, and then finally it's like, here it is, and then it just smacks you in the face from left field. Like you're looking over here waiting, and then it's just like sideswipes you.
Yeah.
So I think that is just genius to me.
And it's just kind of like the whole movie, you felt locked into the headspace of the family. Like even the parts where someone was like out in the world somewhere or he was at school, like you just still felt like locked into his world of shit. And like the world around him just seemed to fade away.
Which is a little weird because you don't think he's going to be like important. Like obviously he's part of the family, he's going to be there.
Yeah, like normally in these ghost movies or whatever you want to call them, yeah, he would be kind of like a throwaway character in a lot of cases. He's just another screaming child in the household to run around, and I don't know.
Right.
But he actually everyone had a use in this movie, and the Joanne woman. So I'm still trying to connect the dots on that a little bit. So she was
just her deal.
Well, she was in the photo albums with Grandma.
Right. So there's no.
So Grandma and Joanne were like working together.
No, they were obviously in the cult.
Okay, together. They're in the cult together.
So they were good friends in that way.
Okay, because I haven't even had really a moment to process any of that.
So the connections kind of happen when I don't even really understand where like the mom, like it starts to click for her somehow. And then she like runs back up to, oh no, she goes to, okay. So the Joanna lady ends up at school, and I think his name's Peter. Peter is sitting there and she's like screaming for him. Then she says stuff in Latin, which I'm assuming was some like a curse or a triggering spell of sorts for like the host to be ready. And then like the mom shows up at Joanna's house, and obviously she's not there, but she's got some like, crazy looking things on the table. She even has what looks like the little things that the daughter was making earlier in the movie sitting on her table, which would be very hard for her to get because how, right? So then the mom looks down at the little mat and then remembers like, oh yeah, I told Joanna that my mom used to make stuff like this that looked exactly the same. And then she's like,
yeah,
a photo book in the attic. Yeah. Like I don't know how that is connected 100% correctly, but it may be just that trigger. Like if my mom's making the same exact type of floor mat, like that's kind of odd, which would kind of trigger this suspicion. So she goes through the attic, sees the picture, sees that this lady is obviously at least knew her grandmother, if not was good friends with her somehow.
Yeah.
And then she sees the books where it explains the Demon King needs a male host, and
yeah, there was a lot of information coming at you real fast, and there was a lot of instances in the movie where there'd be a lot of text on the screen for you to have to read really fast before it goes away. And like I've told you before, I will read something and then not comprehend what the hell I just read at all. That's why I can never get through a book. Right. I have to unless I'm at the beach, that's the only way I can get through a book, because I can fully concentrate on a book at the beach.
This man,
anywhere else.
We had a 2-day business trip And this man literally brought books along like he was going to read them
Yeah.
at the head of each.
I usually don't, but it's better to have them and not
Better
need
safe
them
than
than need them
sorry.
and not have them.
Yeah, so
But anyway, so this stuff would pop up on the screen. Someone would be reading like a note or a text message, or even at the very beginning, there was like a thing to read, and then you and I had to like shut up real quick and be like, "Oh, wait, let me read this,"
yeah,
and
the,
just try to
because
scan through
because
it.
like the skimming that I did on it, it was just like kind of talked about like a funeral.
Like an obituary column.
Yeah, and that's all it was. And I'm guessing that's just so you don't have to see grandma alive.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess so.
So it's just kind of an explanation like, oh, these people were in
Yeah,
some heavy times right from the get-go. Perfect.
yeah, it didn't really bother me. Maybe
No.
that was the quickest way to establish it. It's like I
Right.
understood right away that this was a funeral for grandma, and this is,
Right.
I guess, everything I need to know.
Right. Yeah, I didn't mind it at all. It's just, yeah, it's like you kind of said, it's just the only place this movie really kind of starts to lose it for me is just all of the background information that you either do or don't have. And it's just like, not that I want a movie to be like, oh, I have to be able to figure this out to enjoy it. Not, I'm not meaning that. It's just, it just felt like it started to stretch real far at the end.
Yeah.
And it was just, it wasn't that it was too much. It was just by the end, you're just like,
Yeah, I don't want to be spoon fed, but you're getting over like the fucking shock of getting hit in the face over and
Right.
over again with all this crazy shit that's never happened to you before in a movie, while
Right.
you're also trying to piece together all the plot and all the threads and this and that, and this
Right.
means this,
I mean, it's just like,
and now we're just trying to sit here and unpack the whole thing.
yeah. So yeah, because it all really starts in his room. Then when whatever creature is on his ceiling, and then he walks out to the living room, and then his dad's burnt,
I don't know.
and his mom's on the ceiling, and then there's
Dad
a
had
naked guy.
really bad week.
Yeah. Can we talk about Dad for a second?
Sure.
This man, all he wanted to do
Yeah.
was be as nice as he could to his wife because her mother just died. This guy was trying so hard to keep it together.
At no point did he ever like lose his shit. He was the glue he needed to be
Yeah.
for everyone else.
The most extreme he got was at the kitchen table when the son and mom are yelling. He's just like, "That's enough. Cut it out. We're done.
Yeah.
We're done." And she's like, "That's fine."
She turned into like a devil
Yeah.
while she was yelling. Like it actually literally looked like her teeth grew into fangs
Yeah.
and like horns came out of her head.
Yeah, she was a good actress.
Oh,
for
she
that
killed it.
part, she nailed it.
Yeah, and Dad nailed it too.
I mean, all the acting in this movie was pretty spot on.
It was amazing. Dad, he just needed a little affection. He wasn't
This
getting that
guy-
either.
I wanted to take him out of the movie and just give him
Give him a
thank you,
hug.
Dad card.
And then what's he get in the end? One of the most painful deaths imaginable, burning alive.
Yeah, and the sad thing about it too is how he did end up and die was he was trying so hard to just like be there for her, his wife, mom.
Yeah.
And he stands there as the fireplace is lit. All the furniture, rugs are moved out of the room. Somehow she did that in seconds, you know.
Yeah. She had the help of a demon.
Yeah, she had demon strength at that moment. And she hands him this book that she claims their daughter has been drawing in that is dead.
Mm.
And then says, "We need to burn it, but I can't do it because it burns me alive."
Yeah.
And then sends him over. He throws it in, immediately bursts into flames, and dies.
And then she's like, "Oh, I guess that means it worked. Success. Yay."
Yay!
She was like having to show the look on her face of, "Oh my God, I just sacrificed my husband. But yay, this also means that the magic works and
Right.
I can move on to the next step of sawing my own head off."
Yeah, and that's, yeah, I don't, it's just, it's too much. It's so much to try to like comprehend and piece together, and I don't think it's possible in general.
Yeah, dude, that was just like really coming at you from all angles there at the end. And just watching her dangling up there, sawing her head off, and then she like hits the artery in her neck, and more blood spurts out. It's just like, ugh.
It was disgusting. Um,
And then just floating up there as if like an invisible hand was just picking up her body, and
Right.
just like so goddamn. There's just
yeah,
something
it was,
there's something about like headless corpses that
Yeah.
freak me out. I don't know what
obviously.
it is. It's just something about
Well,
severed heads. It's freaky as fuck to me. Don't know why.
Well, it's like the most inhuman version of a human. Like, how many times you walked around the street and saw a headless person?
Yeah,
Zero.
It's just something about it. It's just so bizarre to me.
Yeah, it's very odd.
Like, did you ever see? You probably never saw Ghosts of Mars. There's like this
No.
John Carpenter movie that he made like really late in his career. Like back, I think he was kind of getting tired of making movies at that point. But it's like
Why not one more?
it's like very ridiculed and not liked. But there was like some imagery in that movie of like these landscapes of just like heads on spikes.
Right.
And even though the movie is like hokey and ridiculous in a million different ways, there's just like some like when I think of that movie, what sticks with me is just those goddamn heads on them spikes.
Right.
I'm just like,
He got his point across.
yeah, it's just like some things, or like Game of Thrones would do it, like
Yeah.
put it on their walls as just like this intimidation thing.
Right. That's because it's
just creepy.
like the human, like your mind, like humanizes everything.
Yeah.
That's why we have like, whatever. So like, you see something on the wall, you're going to see a face or, whatever this is. So when that's like physically disconnected from itself, it's just like,
Yeah.
you don't like, it's like non-computing, like your mind just like, whoa.
Right. Yeah.
It's just very intense.
Yeah. It's just this like soulless, empty shell
Right.
of a face, what used to be all blue and decomposed and
Yeah.
creepy. And
The
the creepiest thing about dead bodies is how still they are. Like,
Oh yeah.
which
Yeah.
sounds like stupidly obvious, but until you've seen a dead person, like you don't realize, like you've never seen a human body, but ever being that still before.
Right. It's uncomfortable.
And so it's there's no chest movement, or at least there shouldn't be. Might have a problem. There is, but yeah. And can come in all kinds of colors: yellow,
yeah.
blue, green, purple.
Yeah.
So yeah, very eerie.
Yeah, it's just the most like unnatural thing for you to see
Yeah.
when you're used to alive things.
Yeah, and then there's just like certain imageries in this movie without any like loud instrumental bangs or cues or anything, just like quietly, subtly, it's there. You're seeing it.
Yeah.
You're seeing it, and then it's gone. And it's just like, and it doesn't prompt you to when it's coming. Yep. It just kind of is there all of a sudden, and then it's gone. And that's the thing. That's what keeps you on edge the whole time, because you never know when you're being fucked with.
Right. And it was kind of throughout the whole thing, which was odd, because like you thought you were used to it, or you did get used to one thing, and then it was just like, whoop, here comes left field again.
Yeah.
The only other thing I have written down, obviously we talked about I just wrote down forced creepiness, which we kind of already talked about. And then the last thing I have written down, which we mentioned briefly, was camera framing. Just like everything in this was so specific to like pushing something. Like even so, the best example I have from the movie is when they were at the kitchen table and mom's like, you guys, 20 minutes ago I conjured your sister and your daughter and we're gonna do it again. So the dad was just like, oh, we're not doing this, fuck this. And so then the camera literally like it went from seeing all three of them to framing up just husband and wife. Right? They argue. He's like, oh, Peter, you don't have to do this. Go back to bed. And then it switches to just, mom and son.
Yeah.
And it like, the camera, without having to do anything, literally puts a divide in between all three of them,
Yeah.
or one person at a time. And I just thought, like, it's such a weird thing to think about because you wouldn't think that's effective.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, the camera literally was showing like this change happening between mom and dad.
Yeah.
And he's trying to protect his son. She's still trying to be like the mom that's just trying to figure everything out. And it was like a camera representation or a framed representation of like this divide happening now.
Yeah.
And there was like a handful of other things like that, obviously, like the dollhouse effect and just how that felt, that I just think they did like so perfectly.
Yeah. And that just adds to the whole like atmosphere eeriness of the whole thing.
Yeah.
How unnaturally still two
Yep.
people are in a room together, as if they were just posed like that. And
Yeah.
someone's just standing back imagining a dialogue taking place between the two of them in their own sick little
Right.
voodoo world mind.
Yeah. And it's crazy.
Yeah, it just felt like a kid with a magnifying glass.
Right.
Just burning an anthill or something.
And
Just-
if there's like some like writer's article on that, like that was their attempt. They nailed it.
Yeah.
I think, because if you don't pick up on it, I don't know what movie you're watching.
Right.
Um.
Yeah, through and through, it was just super well done.
Yeah.
And you could tell it was like very passionately made. And I'm pretty sure this was like a directorial debut.
Who was the director? I don't
I
remember
forget
his
his name. His initials are like AA, like Anzer Asar or something.
Oh yeah, that's who.
But he wrote and directed this, and I think it's his directorial debut, which for a first crack of the bat, I think did
Ari Aster or a star. Yeah.
pretty damn fine job. He mind fucked all of us on his first go around.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Wow. They had, where did that just go? Oh. Guess how much the budget was for this movie?
75 million?
No.
50
10.
million. 10? That's it?
Mm.
Damn.
I know it's hilarious to say that's it. That's crazy. But yeah, so 10 million, and then take a guess at the box office number, like earnings.
US or globally?
It doesn't specify on this. Well, I didn't click into the article, but
I'll say 200 million.
hold on. 80.2.
Okay, that's probably just US.
Yeah. But still, on a $10 million budget, you
Yeah.
did a really good job.
That's just one of the awesome things about horror movies is they can be done so inexpensively.
Well, if you you watch this movie, obviously there's like effects to certain points, but like you're like at the house or at the school or another building inside. Like there's nothing extravagant about it just because it's real world.
Yeah.
So you can keep some budget.
It felt more expensive than it was because it felt
Yeah.
so high caliber.
Yeah, and that's because it was well done. Like
Yeah. Like top tier people be working on this. Somebody got paid big.
I mean,
10 million, that's like wow.
yeah.
They really cranked out a good one for 10 million.
I think
This is that Studio A24 that they make a lot of good movies.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a testament to the director also, because with that low of a budget, you have to be very specific about what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You can't just, we'll fix it and post it, especially with a movie like this. You don't have that option. So it's just got to be correct. And I think they nailed most of everything.
Yeah. For being an art house picture, I think they really stuck the landing.
Yeah. Well, you have anything else to say about it?
No, I don't think so. Do you want to do our fun little
Yes,
rating
I do.
system? Yeah.
So,
you want to use those same categories, or do you think all five of those still apply to this one just the same?
Yeah. I mean, that's just general story or like movie storytelling. Like,
all right.
kind of like categories.
So,
Rewatchability.
I feel like if you're gonna really get all this on your own, you definitely need to watch it a second time. But I'm not exactly eager to break my neck to put the disc right back in there again.
Right.
So there's some movies out there. It's like you watch it once, and although you're glad you saw it once, you're like, I never want to watch this again.
Yeah. Oh, I get it.
I wouldn't say
That's why
that.
there's more than one category.
I wouldn't say that personally about this one, although I'm sure plenty of people out there would one and done this thing,
Right.
if you could even get through it at all. That's a tough nut to crack because I think it definitely deserves its rewatchability because there's a lot to it. So I would give it an 8. An 8.
All that talk about it.
Well, it's so goddamn depressing.
Oh gosh.
I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not jumping over fences to put it right back in again.
Yeah.
Oh, an 8 for you too.
Yeah.
Copycat.
No.
Why did you give it an 8? Just for basically the exact same reason.
Yeah, so I can't give it like a 10 out of 10 because it's not a movie that I'm gonna like run after watching. But will I rewatch it if someone's like, do you want to watch this? Probably.
Yeah.
So that's why it's not a 9 or a 10, but it's like, yeah, I'd do it. For me, that's what that comes down to.
I think it would well earn a 9 or a 10.
Right.
But for us personally, I think an 8 is good.
Yeah, I agree.
Story.
What's the story for you?
Well, the story is we've been having to sit here and pick it apart for a while, but once again, I don't think that's to the movie's discredit because I don't think you need to be spoon-fed every time you sit down for something. But at the same time, like a lot of that was kind of being unraveled really fast.
Yeah.
And maybe that was for the best, for the pacing. Like it was already a 2-hour movie.
Right.
It didn't feel like it overstayed its welcome. And if I had to remove certain parts to make it shorter, I can't think off the top of my head what I would do.
Right.
I feel like
I'm gonna give it
an 8. I'm gonna give that an 8 as well. Because I feel like there was room to maybe do something else. So yeah, that's why I feel like kind of an asshole.
Well, I know that seems like a
you gave it
ridiculous
a
thing to
7.5.
7.5 because I think 7's too low. But for me, the ending like really dropped off hard. Not that it was bad. It was just you couldn't follow it correctly, I think, on the first watch.
Because he's like, oh, you're king now.
Yeah, it was just everywhere at the end.
It feels like maybe there was a scene that should have been in there to flesh things out more.
Yeah,
that was
or
missing.
Just something along the line of like, just give me some solid information, not like I'm going to show you a book with underlined wording in it. And it's just like one sentence about Demon King needs fresh male host, basically.
Some
and it's just like, what?
Some highlighter over some text.
It's like, what are you talking about? Like none of this was brought up before. So it's just odd. So that's why I think there are movies out there that are probably worse with a better story, if that makes any sense. Like maybe production wise, they're just terrible, but they have a good story. And this falls in that like very weird range for me of like a 7 and 8 because the story is awesome. The ending of the movie really like takes a hit for me.
Yeah, like to me, it could still be a good ending. I just have to kind of understand it better.
Right.
I guess.
Well, see, that's the part. It's kind of like,
fast.
Is it a good ending if you can't understand any of it, or is it a bad ending?
Well,
or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you have to, if you have to watch a movie like 2 or 3 times, is it really a good ending, or is it just like so complex that you're hitting like a niche market or a niche market? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of see it, but on the same token, I feel like the intelligence is there. I'm just not intelligent enough to figure it out.
I don't know anything.
But yeah, it came at you real fast, and like you said, oh, here, look at this book. Oh, this part's highlighted. It's about the Demon King. Oh, who's the
Right.
Demon King? Never mind. We're moving on.
Right.
And then this happens, and then she's sawing her goddamn head off, and she's floating up into the treehouse, and there's naked people up there, and there's
See,
a fucking mannequin
what
with a severed head
you
on
know
it.
what it felt
And
like?
he's getting a Burger King hat, and I'm just like, okay.
You know what it felt like? It felt like a horror movie or like a thriller. And that's the stuff that you saw in like that last eighth of the movie, or whatever of the movie, like that should have been throughout the entire movie, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. Like a normal horror movie would have been like, the whole movie's crazy, so that's why it's crazy. This movie was like, we're going to keep you really, really grounded until the end.
Right.
Then you're just going to be floating around in space for who knows how long.
Yeah. Our head is still a swirling pile of stew.
So, characters.
Characters.
Do you think it was a believable characters in general?
Yeah. I think they didn't overstep with the amount of roles they put in there. Ooh.
Yeah.
Big numbers, eh? They didn't
Yeah.
overstep with, they didn't overpack it with roles. The roles that were there were acted out as well as could be.
Right.
And most notably, that acting scene with her after she found her daughter's headless body in the car was done so well, and just her just completely losing her mind,
Right.
and portraying this person that has been through some real bad shit, like the worst imaginable
Yeah.
a person could go through. I think she executed it flawlessly. The kid actors were great. Normally kid actors can be really annoying, or not good actors, but the kids
They
were
both
great.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can't fault it. And if I can't fault it or anything, it's not like, it's like, yeah, I have movies out there with characters in them. Like, people, you have Star Wars movies, and there's Vader, and there's Lord of the Rings, there's Aragorn, and there's like those characters.
Yeah.
But, for this movie and for what it is on its own, like, I can't fault it at all. So, whew. Yeah, I'd give it a 10.
10. So my reasoning behind my 10 is I can't think of any of those. It's kind of, you summed it up in a nice way. I guess I'll over explain it, but I can't find any room or anything to add to the characters to beef them up or make them better.
Yeah.
So in my mind, it's kind of like the character was complete.
Yeah.
In that sense. So like if I think of like Dad, he like really did his role as that, like, I'm just trying to get through it with everybody and get it over with and move on. He did it perfectly. Mom, crazy psycho mom that's attempting to love her children in her own, perfect. Brother, typical teenage brother, doesn't give a shit until everything's awful and he's now the Demon King. Like, perfect. Little sister, she did her job.
You could write a bio on each of them.
Even the secondary characters, the kids in the school, his wannabe girlfriend, they all did their job, even though those parts, or like even like the Joanna lady, she perfect. I can't add anything to that to make it better. Grandma wasn't even really a character. Can't add anything to make it better because it was her just the knowledge of her being dead, but also probably not, was enough for that character to be complete.
Her presence was felt throughout the whole movie, even though she wasn't in it, and that is worthy of a 10.
Right. So that's mine. So, a do you believe it factor. So not that is everything believable in real world, but did you believe the story that they were telling?
Like, okay. Like, do I buy it?
Yeah.
Like this for the war, for like the universe, because each movie sets up its universe,
Right.
It sets its boundaries, and then it has to live within those boundaries and convince you of it.
So I'll just say, for me personally, this do you believe it is heavily affected by this.
Do you believe it is heavily affected by the story aspect of it being a little bit,
yes, 100%
ambiguous and
confusing,
kind of rapid fire there
right.
at the end?
Right. Yeah. So to me, these are a little bit similar, but the story and the do you believe it type of thing, but they are separate in a sense, I guess.
Yeah. It. I guess I'd give it an 8
Yeah.
because I'm.
So I'm gonna.
There was nothing that
I'll-
really happened that took me majorly out of it.
Right.
Most of it just kind of rolled off me, but it was like the stuff we've already talked about.
Yeah. So the only reason why I'm not just going to give it a 7.5 again is because like in, like you said, in that kind of universe set up, I believe everything that happened. I just don't think the story just really dropped off about that.
Yeah, I think
Universe,
what
so
would
to
have
say.
lowered that is if the conversation after Big Brother bonked off his little sister's head, and then he
Spoiler.
was in his room staring at the wall until morning, and Mom found the body. At one point, you were like, "Aren't they going to have a conversation
Right.
about what took
I
place?"
actually wrote that down, but I didn't say anything about it because they had the yelling match
They
at the
they
table.
did have the conversation. Yeah. So if had that not been in there, I'd have been like,
Yeah.
"Don't you think at some point this would have been brought
Yeah.
up?"
Like, hey, son, remember that time when you accidentally killed your sister? No? Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Let's go.
I
over
know that was yesterday, but can we please talk? Like,
Yeah.
that's another thing. It was so ridiculous. Like, his dad, I don't think ever said anything about any of it. Like, no lines about, I know this is tough for you, or like, he just had to go through it.
Yeah.
And then, which like it's all summed up to him driving his son home that just bashed his face into his desk because he was like being possessed or whatever, and almost runs a red light and then just bursts into tears, only to then that night, I believe, get burned alive.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Everyone
bro.
in this movie has a really, really bad day, and they never end up getting anything together for
Well,
the better.
Peter the son maybe did,
Well, yeah,
because if he's the king
now he's Treehouse King of the naked people.
of the naked people, yeah, of the old naked people.
So I guess it worked out okay for him. I mean, whenever he smokes his weed, he's probably gonna have some bad memories sprout into his head,
right,
about some shit in the past.
So bringing it to the creativity level,
10.
You think so?
I'd give it a 10 because, like we already went over, everything was just so well thought out.
Yeah, I agree. Because and this is the reason why go ahead if you were going to say anything.
We'll probably end up
cut you
saying
off, but
basically the same thing, but every single aspect, nook and cranny of the filmmaking process was meticulously thought out by each department, with like a creative lead at the top, like overseeing everything and making sure his desired effect that he wanted to have on an audience was carried out.
right.
And it was. And there was so many unique things happening. The scares in this movie were very unique and very unnerving and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then there was just certain shots or certain moments where it was just so damn bold.
Yep.
And so in your face without feeling like it was pretentious. And movies like this have this danger of feeling pretentious and being
Right.
all artsy fartsy. But
Yeah.
But this one stuck the landing for me. And on the creativity aspect, yeah, the fucking dollhouse aspect and the voodoo and the possession and everything, it feels like it's all cleverly done.
Right.
Not in a way where it spoon feeds us, but in a way where we have to
It's
kind
a
of figure
thinker,
some things
yeah.
out for ourselves. Yeah, it's a thinker's movie.
Um,
And if you're gonna tell a story about like whatever the hell you give the log line of this thing, the theme of this thing, I don't really
confusion.
know. Yeah, at whatever they were going for,
It's Hereditary.
they delivered it in a super creative way.
Yeah.
And you knew it was right out the gate as the movie was starting. You're like, all right, this is super cool. Just going into the dollhouse and the dollhouse in the same shot becoming real life.
And that was a shot at the very beginning that I like under my breath was like, please, 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 please do it because it's gonna be so cool. And it was.
And so many of the shots were just done like all on this very symmetrical axis.
Yep.
Where it's just like the house was just like had a big cut going right down it vertically, and you were just
like
looking into the dollhouse.
Yeah. It just
it just worked.
It was perfect. Yeah, because see, and my thing about like giving it a 10 for creativity is like, even though my story, I don't think it was like strong at the end, everything else that they did to make this movie happen like outweighs that ending for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it definitely makes up for anything that it lacked at the end with the story.
Right.
So in that, you know, we gave it an 8.75.
8.75 out of 10.
So let's check the IMDb.
We are now going to compare our Alchemy Point podcast score with.
Do you want to take a guess
IMDb.
at what the 234,000 people that have voted rated on this out of 10?
8.3.
7.3.
Huh. Okay.
Which
I get it.
kind of goes back to the whole confusion thing to me. Because I think if they would have streamlined a little bit more, not that it would have made the story any better, it just would have made it more palatable. That's all.
Yeah. The bad scores are probably coming from people that were expecting a boogeyman movie.
Right.
And didn't get enough ghosts, didn't get enough jump scares, didn't get it.
Yeah.
Couldn't follow it, didn't know why all this crazy, disturbing shit. Oh, this little girl has got her head bonked off. Oh my God. Yeah. And there's her decomposing head on the side of the road.
Yeah, I'm sure some people turned the movie off or walked out of
that.
the theaters.
That's probably where a lot of people checked out.
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe she was dead that quick in the movie.
Me neither. I mean, she's on the freaking movie poster.
I was like, that has
sake.
to be like a dream.
Right.
Like she's going to be coming back like 2 scenes later somehow because you can't be out that quick.
Well, and that's another thing is like once grandma seems to be not in the picture, your mind immediately goes to, oh, well, the little girl is now haunting everyone.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen either.
Yeah.
And then the mom's psycho, so you kind of think she might be haunting everybody, but she might not be.
She's
very confusing.
You don't know, like there's some fuckery going on here, but you're not sure the source of it,
right?
Because there's so many different places it could come from when you have this much shit going on.
Well, and maybe that's the whole kicker. Like the Demon King was the source manipulating everyone, and that's the
Demon King and Grandma working together, pulling the strings.
But
to crown grandson that smokes too much weed.
King of the demon. One of the. What did she say? It was like king. One of the 8th kings of hell.
Yeah, that's
and
a
they
badass title.
Crowned him. He said a Burger King crown. That's all but what it was. It looked like a harder Burger King crown, probably not made of paper.
Maybe Burger King would do better than McDonald's if they start giving out hard crowns.
But yeah, which was kind. See, that's the kind of stuff I hate about movies that leave. And this is kind of like my 7.5 reasoning, I guess, is because there's some cool info there that I wish would have been a little bit more upfront instead of just like that weird, like, here's your Easter egg at the end of the movie, which could make it seem like we're doing a sequel, but we're probably not. And it's just kind of like, come on.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't want to act like I'm fucking smarter than the director or the writer or anything.
You are.
Oh, geez, thank you. I don't know, but like I was fully invested in this thing. I wasn't like checking out at all. Yeah, so I could have done another 5 or 10 minutes to just kind of flesh out that ending a little bit more.
Right.
Maybe understand this Demon King a little bit better and how he plays into things.
I mean, how cool would it have been if Joanna, whoever it is there now, is like, what was the demon's name? Like Pamoth or whatever it was. She's like, oh, yeah, Peter, you are now 8th king of the hell, and your name is this now. And and he's just standing there. How cool would it have been for them to like then kind of explain it a little bit more, just in that scene? Like it was just like, this is what your grandma, just give me something. Like grandma was trying to get you here for years and your mom never let her, and like, oh, okay, so that's where some of that weird stuff comes from, or just like a little bit of
Yeah.
like
I don't know.
less than a dirt road and more of like a
Yeah, not in a way where someone just sits there delivering exposition for 10 straight minutes, unless they got like one of those really awesome voices
Right.
and they can just like complete like those really good
in a
kind of
world.
ghost story talking voices that like explain it. I think the best one of the best exposition deliveries in any movie ever is Morpheus in the Matrix.
Oh,
Because
I
there he
literally was
is
going to say the Matrix and
talking in a chair
yeah.
about this is
Oh,
the
it's so-
world. Let me
yeah.
explain it to you for
Yep.
20 minutes. And it's so riveting
Yeah.
because
And
it's,
and the best part about that is you don't even like comprehend that it's just a guy talk. Like you could close your eyes and get all of the information.
Yeah.
That's how good that is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this was
it's cool to hear again in
yeah.
the Matrix, even if you've seen the Matrix 100 times. Every
Right.
time you can sit there and listen to Morpheus say that,
Yeah.
because just to imagine that crazy world that he's describing,
Right.
it's just cool every time to hear it.
Yeah, and then the entire movie is basically like solidifying what he said,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is, kind of just a machine that turns over on itself, and that's why I don't know. I mean the first Matrix was awesome, but yeah, I just think that Hereditary it was like so close, but then it just like off the deep end. I was like, ugh. Not that like we said, not that it was bad. It was just a little too far.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I feel like it was like Super Mario sticking the landing on the platform, but he did a
Yeah.
jump that was like felt like a glitch.
Right.
It's like really unbelievable.
Yeah, it was just like what?
It's yeah, and again, that was just because there was so much our brains were having to dissect on this, and at the same time, it just kind of wraps it up really quick there at the end with a lot of things thrown on the table at the end that weren't there before,
Right.
and so then yeah, it's
It just becomes a lot to handle, then.
yeah,
Your mind can't just like ease into it.
there's a lot of irons in the fire there at one point.
Right.
Yeah, too many ghost cooks in the kitchen, even though there's like not ghosts flying all around.
Right.
But kudos to that creepy fucking ghost child or mom, we don't even know, sitting up there on the corner of the wall.
Oh god.
And then just like Spider-Man walking her way out of the room silently.
Yeah, that was the weirdest thing I've ever
gives
seen.
me the fucking willies. But yeah, I think that's a pretty fair score for a pretty solid movie.
Yeah, I think it's solid. I don't think we like over splooged on it or
So if you're looking for something to watch this Christmas,
not Hereditary.
yeah. If you didn't really get
Pull grandma in.
yeah. Look, people, if you didn't really get your thrills from Snow Dogs this year,
don't pick a boring Christmas movie.
yeah,
Pick Hereditary.
right. Yeah, it'll get some hot cocoa and some eggnog and put some alcohol in it and gather the kids around ages 4 and up.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So I guess that's all we have to say about
Yeah.
it. With my marble mouthed explanation of trying to figure this one out.
Our pro-am explanation.
Yes, very pro-am.
Well, if you
But that's the impression of two dudes fresh off of seeing it straight away.
yeah, which
on
I think
lots of coffee and little sleep.
our assessment was at least fair.
Yeah.
Probably not 100% accurate, but who cares?
Of all of the 3 movies that we've done on this podcast so far, this was the most enjoyable. Well, is enjoyable the word? It's our most highly ranked.
Yeah,
movie
it's our most highly
experience.
ranked. I think it was the most captivating.
Impressionable.
Yeah, or impressionable is a better word, I think. Enjoyable can be used a lot of different ways.
Yeah, because as I'm like looking at a kid's severed head in the street, I'm not sitting there like, this is enjoyable.
This is my favorite movie
Yeah,
ever.
yeah. Oh, I'm in a good mood now. Hee-haw.
Well, if that's
Yeah.
that's that.
That is Hereditary.
Like always, please comment, subscribe. Please give us a movie to watch. You can go to anchor.fm/Alchemy Point Podcast. Leave us a voice message. Tell us what movie you want. Leave a comment on the YouTube channel. And I think that's it.
And have a good night.
Well, goodbye.
Damn, that's right.
You know, freaking.
No, what's this? But I'd rather have one yourself.
Yeah, up to your guys, give us the end.
Hey, you can't fucking get better. Come here, we get.